Let's look at an example of using our trigonometric identities to solve this problem. So let theta be an acute angle such that the cosine of theta equals 3 over 4. Use trigonometric identities to find the sine of theta and tangent of theta. Alright, so we know that we have the cosine of theta equals 3 over 4. Right, now one thing I want to point out is notice that how these trig identities are set up. That if we can find the sine and the cosine, then we have the rest of the identities, because cosecant 1 over sine, secant 1 over cosine, tangent is sine over cosine, cotangent cosine over sine. So a good strategy in these problems is try to find the sine first. Right, so what do we do to find the sine? Well, a common identity that we like to use a lot is this Pythagorean identity. Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta equals 1. So let's go ahead and write that out. The sine squared of theta plus the cosine squared of theta equals 1. Alright, so we have the sine squared of theta plus, cosine is 3 over 4 squared equals 1. Now that we have this, we should be able to solve for sine of theta. So we have the sine squared of theta plus, let's see, 3 4 squared is 9 over 16 equals 1. Let me come up here. So that means the sine squared of theta is 1 minus 9 over 16. So that means the sine squared of theta, so what's that, 16 over 16, so that's 7 over 16. And then we take the square root of both sides, and the sine of theta is plus or minus the square root of 7 over 4. Now, because of the acute angle, again, in future videos we'll look more closely about whether it's plus or minus, but because it's an acute angle, it has to be positive. Basically, it's in quadrant 1. And so we know it's positive. So that means the sine of theta is the square root of 7 over 4. Okay, now we need to find the tangent. Well, the tangent, once we have sine and cosine, the tangent's easy. Tangent's just sine over cosine. So the tangent of theta is the sine of theta over the cosine of theta. So that's the square root of 7 over 4 over 3/4. So that is the square root of 7 over 4 times 4/3, which is the square root of 7 over 3. And so we rewrite them both out. So the sine of theta is the square root of 7 over 4. The tangent of theta is the square root of 7 over 3. And we put a nice box around that. Good. Alright, so here's a good example of using trig identities to solve this problem. And we use two of the trig identities that we'll use a lot in trigonometry and in calculus and beyond, and that is sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, and that the tangent is sine over cosine. So these are definitely two identities that we want to remember.